got my hand in front of it. Okay, do you want me to? I'll let you do it, Jack. It almost looks like I tilted it a smidge.
That's about it.
I wish us luck. It looks.
Hi there.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm an elbowing people.
Well, El Maibo.
Yeah. How are you? Good to see y'all. Yes, we have a beautiful congregation. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Unity of the Hill Country. I'm Jack Porter. I'm going to be your leader today. Welcome to Facebook and YouTube. We're streaming live tonight. Unity of the Hill Country is where we inspire one another to experience ourselves. If you go to the slide for the opening statement, please. Together, there is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe. God, the good, So, announcements. I have a couple announcements today. Next week we're having speakers is Rick Busby. He's been here before, and we enjoy every time he comes. So he'll be here next week. Town hall meeting is today, sponsored by the search team. Okay, so we want to encourage everyone to stay after. We'll give you a 10-minute break, go to the restroom, have some food, some goodies, and then we'll start about 10 minutes after we finish our service. Chris, would you like to come up and kind of give an idea of what you're going to be talking about? It's sponsored by the search team.
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning.
Alright, so today's, there we go. So this town halls today, as Jack was saying, there will be a 10-minute break, and then we'll start to do the town hall. So we're going to ask anybody and everyone who wants to come up, we'll have an opportunity for you to come up. We're going to take your notes as to what you were looking for in your next minister. So be putting your thinking caps on, see what you feel, what is being told to you, so that way we can mark it down. And then from there, what we're going to do is take all that data, put it out on a survey, and then we're going to have that survey go out. And then that survey is going to go out to your home address or email, and we're also going to have surveys available in the church office, during the office whenever it's open, and that's Monday through Thursday from 10 to 2. I'll almost have that remembered now. And then we're going to have all the surveys back to us on October 24th, and then we're going to have a committee review, and we'll have the results of that. So it's kind of an outline over the next couple of weeks with that. And then we got one more affirmation, right? Yeah. All right. So as a search team committee, we have come up with an affirmation, and this is what we're going to be saying every Sunday to kind of give us a little bit of unity. So if you can read the slide with me, it's going to start with together we are the beacon, illuminating the path forward for our perfect new minister to join us. So as one, we will all shine brighter. There you go.
Thank you, Chris. Today is Celebration Sunday. So we're going to ask if anyone has a birthday or anniversary, please stand up and kind of tell us when it is. Oh, we got one over here. You don't have to stand up. Okay. Anyone else? Patty?
I have a birthday on the 30th.
All right.
I have a birthday on the 25th. I'll be 86 years old.
And now, in spiritual celebration, I would like to stand and briefly share, anyone that would like to stand and briefly share a blessing or gratitude for answered prayer. Your Unity family would love to celebrate with you. Anybody have a affirmation or a prayer that was answered? Okay. Now, together we're going to give you a blessing. Are you ready? Those who have birthdays and anniversaries. We love you. We bless you. We appreciate you. And we behold the Christ you are. We want to thank Paul and Alan for bringing the goodies today. We have cupcakes. Does anybody else brought any goodies? Okay, we have cupcakes. And they say, please, please eat them because they got to take them home. And that's, of course, that's weight gain. All right. First timers, we'd like to extend a special welcome to anyone who is first time this morning. If you're comfortable, raise your hand. The usher will bring you a welcome packet. If you don't want to raise your hand, you can see the usher after the service. There's a nice pen as a gift, a really nice writing pen. Do we have any newcomers today? Raise your hand. Okay, there you go. Chris? Welcome. Welcome to our church. We're so happy to see you today. Prayer requests. Next slide.
Yep.
Prayer is an important spiritual practice. In fact, Unity was founded on prayer. We're always ready to pray with you. Prayer request cards are in the seat pocket in front of you. Complete and drop it into the offering bag when it's passed later on today. Or you can drop it in the box outside the door. Will a member of the team come? You're really quick, Chris. And Don, would you like to give a blessing?
Sure. As we begin this, we do just like we did the blessing with our hands, and that's simply a way to communicate from our heart to those who are seeking answers to prayer, those prayers that we know are being answered. So open ourselves up to that God within, that Christ you are, and know that these prayers are being answered. They're being answered today. And together we say, thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Amen.
Thank you, Don. Don will be our speaker later on. Together, we'd like to affirm our vision and mission and vision statement. Together, to live consciously, celebrating divine potential in all. The daily word today will be given by Judy Johnson.
Well, the Christ candle is lit, reminding us of the divine in all of us. And the word is shared with many millions of people around the world. And I find it amazing that every time I have to read the word, it's the very word I need. Okay. The word today is faith. With the assurance of faith, I move ahead with confidence. Faith is my guiding light. It keeps me hopeful when I'm tempted to doubt. can come to pass. All of the wisdom, power, love, and strength of God are mine to express as only I can. Leaving timidity and hesitancy behind, I use these divine attributes boldly and with confidence. Faith shows me the way forward. And this is from Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Let's say the affirmation again. With the assurance of faith, I move ahead with confidence.
Thank you, Judy. Now we're going to go into meditation. We have a meditation song. And if you want to, you close your eyes and receive the meditation song.
Surrender.
There's just one presence. There's just one power. God. God is love. Love is ever present. Love is truth. You are love. Your spirit is free. You make every moment. You make every thought. You choose every feeling. Allow the love you are to unfold. Allow your wholeness, your beauty to shine. This is your life. Love it. Let it be. And so it is. Amen.
In your bulletin today is a little information on Don Silent. He will be our speaker today, and he has a few words to share with us and a lesson. So Don, please come on up.
So I'm supposed to stay between the tape, they tell me. There's a lot of my life folks tell me about boundaries, so I'm going to try to honor them today. We'll see. We'll see how that works. I attended this church back when we were in the little house over off of Main Street, and it was a long drive from Fredericksburg on Sunday mornings, and I decided I was going to be an Episcopalian for a while. And actually it was pretty nice because we had a guy that had a collar on, but I swear he was a Unity minister. He was such a Unity minister that they asked him to leave. So I started my own study group when he left, and we had a group of folks who met over there. All of us were refugees from Unity in Houston, and we had all hung out there, and that's where we were introduced. In fact, that's where I met my wife. So Our experience here was a pretty difficult time as we watched our church go away, and the new fellow was just a little bit on the strict side, especially if you didn't follow all the rules. So those boundaries are important. So the talk is going to be about everything having a reason, and you hear it a whole lot in Unity, and we're going to talk about some of what that might mean. And when I was talking to my wife, she couldn't be here. She's had something else to do. So one of the things that happened is that I heard someone say that an organization that I had been involved with was going to close its doors after 30 some odd years. And the answer was, well, everything happens for a reason, we just don't know what it is. And I felt that was just too glib for 30 years of people being a part of this organization. I thought, my goodness gracious, help me understand what's going on here, because there are tears going on. There are people who have lost something that's very important to them. And just saying, oh well, that's how it felt to me. Just saying that really kind of got me going. So I sat down, started working on a blog, and then Beverly said, could you fill in next Sunday? And I said, oh yeah. I got me a talk to do. I don't have to write 500 words in my blog. I can just talk. And then she said, I got 20 minutes, and oh man, I'm in trouble now with that. But I had a lot to say. And then, as I was talking to my wife, I had to check to make sure I'm doing this right. As I was talking to my wife, she said, there you go. You did it again. You picked a talk because something's going on in your life, and your answer will take hours or days or weeks or months. In fact, we're still fussing about this very topic with friends of mine from seminary. My goodness, we can't agree on it. So I'm not going to ask you guys to agree with me on a darn thing. I'm just going to ask you to start to think. You guys know this is New Thought. And thinking is what we do. And that's what we're going to try to accomplish here, is to get a little bit of thought going before we decide to put something on a bumper sticker. Now this thing here, this idea of why we're here, this is our reason. This is the reason that we're here. Now this idea of developing soul may make you a little bit nervous. When you say develop soul, you say, well, my soul doesn't need to be developed. You know, it came along with the package when I was born. Well, Mr. Fillmore is talking about consciousness. Metaphysical Bible Dictionary tells us that the soul is our consciousness. And what he's talking about there is for us to take our consciousness and develop it until it's one and the same with divine mind. Now, I can manage to do that 2 or 3 minutes a week. Usually when I'm quiet. Usually when I'm alone. Rarely does anybody notice. Being that far developed, that idea that when you wake up in the morning, you don't even think about love. You are love. Imagine that. That's the reason it's only a couple minutes. It's usually after I see the dog and before I see anything else. Certainly before I turn on the television set. So, this idea of development of the soul is why we're going to ask some questions about that saying, everything happens for a reason. Because the reason has to be something to do with our soul development. It needs to be there. Now, people say this, use these terms. Why do they use these terms? They use these terms because life is difficult. When I talk to some friends about doing this, they're not minister friends, and they decided to tell me about stuff that happened in their lives. One friend I just talked to this morning, and she said, boy, I heard that a lot at my nephew's funeral. And I said, really? Well, the nephew, 3 years old, went swimming in a lake. and got a virus or a bacterial infection from some bacteria that was in that lake. And the child died. And so at the funeral, my friend is standing next to her brother, and the brother, and people tell the brother, what do they tell him? You guys can help me here. What do they say? What do people say at a funeral?
God's will.
God's will. God needed an angel. We just didn't know it was this early. He's in a better place. He's not suffering because he was sick for days and weeks. We hear that. Why do we hear it? Why do we hear that? It's God's will. Most of the time we hear people say it's God's will because they got to have something to say. What about if they just said, oh, I love you, I'm so sorry. But no, we got to figure out something more meaningful. We got to have some meaning to this thing because a 3-year-old dying from swimming in a lake just doesn't feel good. Have you ever heard anybody say it's God's will when really good stuff happens? You know, when I was preaching when Houston Astros won the World Series, and of course we were all saying that was God's will, and then we found out it was because they were cheating. But that's another story. That's another story. But the thing is that we always have difficult things going on in our lives. And the thing that I immediately thought about when I thought about the child dying, I also thought that, you know, sometimes when we talk about losing things in our lives, losing people in our lives, we don't think about the fact that that's forever. Losing that child is forever. It is the rest of this man's life, and it is a new way his life will be because of that absence. And you know, the absence of a child cannot be talked away with a bumper sticker. We can't talk it away. We can't do anything with it. That's what makes us so uncomfortable. I was with a woman who took her 2 weeks to die. Every day I went to see her, I prayed with her, and the nurse said, there's no reason for her to still be alive. No reason. And she asked the granddaughter who was there, said, is there any reason that she can't let go, won't let go? She didn't know. And then finally, I got a chance to talk to her sister, her daughter. And her daughter said, well, you know, my sister lives in Florida and hasn't talked to Mom in 30 years. There's a whole story about what went on, and none of that was really important. But finally, that sister called the sister in Kansas, called the sister in Florida. The sister in Florida called Mom. And Mom sat there beaming while the daughter was on the phone. Hadn't spoken in 30 years. And about an hour later, I said, I gotta go. I gotta go home. And I said, Barb, is there anything you want to pray about? And she said, hell no. I'm done. I'm done. And before I got home, she died. So there was a meaning there, but a meaning none of us knew. And when we say, oh, there's a meaning here, and we'll see it later, 30 years is a long time. So it ain't working for me to make people happy at a funeral. I'm not even going to try. So when we think about bad things, oh no, you see, I told you. I went past that boundary. I needed my wife here because she would never let me do that. I call her my live-in higher power. 12 steppers in here know what that means. But in 2017, a hurricane called Harvey visited Houston. And the picture on the left, it's hard to see. I didn't realize it was not going to show up that well. But it was about 1/4 of a mile, maybe close to a 1/2 mile down that street to get to the shopping center where my church was. And my board president and I loaded up kayaks and we walked down that creek. Now the water was only about knee deep, and it started coming up higher and higher, and she told me there was a limit to how high it was going to go for her to continue. And luckily we never got there, and we got into our church, and you can see there was some dry land back there. So immediately, what do? We go to seek solutions. Solutions are, we talked to the insurance people. They said you got to cut out all the drywall at 4 feet. You got to do a lot of work. And so we started working on that, started drying things out, did everything from Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We were ready to be on bare concrete floors Sunday morning. We had taken so much out of our church, and all of our neighbors had taken so much out of their places. You can see that it looked like some kind of well, wait a minute. It was a disaster area, come to think of it. It was a mess. And this stinky mess happened to stay for 3 weeks, by the way. So we were ready for church, though. We had a portable piano player. We had all the things we needed. I arrived at 9 o'clock. People were already there. They're ready for church. And I look at them, and these ladies are just sitting on the curb crying. And I said, what happened? We see our neighbors had a bakery, and they didn't have insurance. So their decision on how to handle that problem was a fire. So to put the fire out, they had to come into our church and spray water through the ceiling to the bakery. So they sprayed water on our baby grand piano, all over our chairs, and extinguished the fire, but they destroyed essentially what was left of our church. And as I stood there scratching my head, an old-time Unity lady came up to me and said, what? Everything happens for a reason, and you just don't know what it is. And I said, I said, you're darn right. I don't know what it is. And I changed my talk that day, by the way, to talk about how everything doesn't always happen for a reason according to God. That God is always here. Whether we're talking about somebody's doing something terrible to you or accidentally doing something terrible, like the guy that almost hit me as he was texting and driving when I came here. Those things are individual decisions. Every one of us has a choice. And in my opinion, and in my belief system, God's always there, but he didn't pluck me out of my car so I didn't get hit. The guy just happened to look up. This fire, this flood, the flood was caused by atmospheric conditions. Things were spinning around up in the air, and this happened. Now I'll tell you, sometimes Unity folks will say, yeah, this is God's will. It's part of a plan. But so will some of my fundamentalist friends. Some of my fundamentalist friends explain things that happen because of things we're doing to honor and respect folks who have a sexuality different than they do. So they say we're having hurricanes, we're having terrible, horrible, bad things because we are honoring and respecting our fellow human beings. So I said maybe we should rethink that a little bit and come up with another idea rather than doing what Franklin Graham says. Now, I will say, Franklin Graham can believe whatever he wants to believe until he starts hurting my friends. Then we have a problem. And there's another conversation we'll have about that. Now, Mr. Fillmore said, thoughts are things. Might have been Mr. Fillmore. It might have been somebody else. Or in the 20s or 30s, you might have heard Napoleon talk about that as well. The reason I bring this up is because we do a lot of this in Unity. Well, we do it a lot everywhere. Because you know you can just Google thoughts or things and say, who said thoughts or things? And it says, who did it say? It said Charles Fillmore said that. Then you go a little bit further and then you find out this guy named Prentice Mulford might have done it. And I didn't even know who Prentice Mulford was, but Prentice Mulford was a New Thought guy who was active at the same time Charles Fillmore. Who knew? The point of that is that when we just Google stuff, sometimes we get it wrong. Because, I don't know if you knew that, but the internet doesn't have a fact checker out there. Keeps you from taking horse medicine. But this one actually happened, because I saw this on video. This is when Maya Angelou said this to Oprah. And I'd like somebody to read it so I don't have to turn my back to you, because that's just not good. You want to read
Would
it,
love
Cecile?
to. Words are things. I'm convinced someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally, into you.
I'm not sure that happens that way. But it's a powerful, powerful statement, a powerful sentiment to me to say it pervades your life. What you say is pervasive. And what you say is what you are thinking. And what you're thinking controls your experience in this life. Now, when we get into these things about t-shirts and bumper stickers, my wife said I have to make a few things clear. One is we're going to talk about Zippos. Does everybody in here know what a Zippo is? Not everybody knows. Okay, a Zippo was a brand of lighter. And in order to be accepted in the army where I was, you had to use a Zippo lighter. If you didn't use a Zippo lighter, you just weren't one of the cool kids. We had to have Ray-Ban sunglasses. I was a pilot. You had to have Ray-Ban sunglasses and a Zippo lighter. You just couldn't be anything else. So you're going to see a lighter. It's not mine. I don't have one anymore. I quit smoking 35 years or 40 years ago. So I don't have my lighter. But I do have some t-shirts. And I had some t-shirts that I thought were a good idea at the time. So one of those t-shirts said this whole idea about let's love. And it was in response to this thing we're talking about with Franklin Graham and hurricanes and all that kind of thing. But what happened to me when I wore it for a while is I wore it on purpose to a family picnic. My wife always says I act like I'm 12 when I would go to family reunions, because she said, I don't recognize you and I don't like you. Because I act just like I did with my parents. Now they're past, but when we'd go to family reunions and I'd pick on my brother, and it was just, I'm not a good human being with my family, so, and they've agreed and I don't see them. But when I wore that, they were really bothered because they thought that they had gone as far as they needed to go by saying, love the sinner and hate the sin. And rather than honoring that progress that they had made, I just basically said, no, that's not far enough. You can't be friends with me if you don't go all the way to say love. So the shirt just didn't mean the same thing to me. It wasn't as powerful. It's a great statement. It's a great sentiment. It just didn't work so well after a little while. The same thing happened with the Coexist t-shirt. You guys may have Coexist bumper stickers, people making money off of those things. They've been doing it for 20 years. See, coexistence, those of us that are old enough to remember Russia was going to destroy the whole world, or we were going to destroy the whole world, and the whole idea was this idea of coexistence. In other words, we weren't going to destroy each other. We kind of had this agreement that you do what you want to do, I'll do what I want to do, and nobody's going to get destroyed. So that was the idea behind it. And then I got to thinking about, wait a minute. I have a Muslim neighbor right now. And he and I, by the way, Muslims may know more about the Hebrew Bible than you do. They may know more even about the Christian Bible than you do. My neighbor talks to me about 12 passages in the Bible that are entire chapters in the Quran. And I recognize that I want to do more than coexist with him. I want to learn with him. I want to know him as a human being. I want to relate in ways not just to be mean, not be mean to him, but to show him my love, that I care for him as a human being, and my understanding that we're both praying to the same God. In fact, if Jesus was praying, he'd probably be saying Allah and not what we say. So it stopped working for me. I still got it hanging up because I just don't throw stuff away. So in Vietnam, that's the Zippo right there. That's the Zippo lighter. And there's fancy ways that you can snap it open and you can make things happen with it. Mostly you're lighting cigarettes or pipes. It's all that really is. But that saying, when I saw that saying, I said, I got to get that engraved. What it says there is, one has never lived till he has almost died. Life has a flavor the protected will never know. So I felt really cool. I almost died. And what I learned later is that almost dying and feeling pretty good about not dying isn't a flavor at all. It's not a flavor in life. It's just a feeling that, whew, that's all it is. It's not a good way to look at your life, because life is not flavored by all the things that almost happened to us. So along with quitting smoking, I got rid of my Zippo, and I got rid of that saying. Because the flavor of life, I'll tell you, the true flavor of life comes from the humans in your life, and your dogs and cats, gerbils and goldfish. Whatever it is that you hang out with, that's where the flavor comes in. Because why? It's love. God is love, and love, that's where our flavor is going to come in our lives. So, here's the t-shirt. I'm in the way. I'm just saying.
Great.
We'll see what we can do here. Everything happens for a reason as a t-shirt or a bumper sticker. Again, I'm not saying don't hold this in your mind. I'm not telling you not to use it. What I'm suggesting is there are different things, different ways to think about it and apply it in your life. So when do we say it? I already mentioned it. When do we say it? Somebody tell me. When bad stuff happens. When bad stuff happens that we can't explain. When a situation exists that we can't explain. That's when we do this thing. So what does that imply? It implies that there's some unknown reason, and it happens because of some outside force. Some force. And we may call that force God. Now, some people don't like to use the word God. I had a guy in my church that used to tell me, Don, you said God 23 times at the end of every talk. He counted the numbers of times, and he said he had problems with the idea of God because God had hurt him or something. And I remind you that if you think God and say universe, it's the same darn thing. It's the same thing. If you're thinking God, it is about God. So some of us will say this thing was caused by God. Now, I'm going to use another name here that some of you may or may not know. There's a guy named Billy Joe Shaver who is a Texas songwriter, and Billy Joe said something about the evil one. He didn't say it that way. He said, you know, the devil made me do it the first time, and the second time I did it all on my own. So blaming things on outside forces can be pretty powerful in terms of just pushing it aside, letting it go, getting rid of it. But it's always there. Just like that lady who had troubles with her daughter for 30 years. That problem was still there for 14 days when she tried to die. So the question is it your theology or is it some form of spiritual bypass? You guys know what theology is. That's how you think God is, how God reacts acts in your life. Spiritual bypass is when we use some kind of spiritual idea to avoid. So if you want to avoid emotions, you want to avoid problems, you may use some spiritual idea, misuse a spiritual idea in terms of bypassing. So when we think about God, the question then is, do you believe that God causes things to happen in ways that are designed for you to learn from? Or causes things to happen in this world other than through nature? Now that may be how it works for you. Now I believe when we pray, we are bringing our Christ energy into situations. I believe God knows everything we need. Jesus said that. I don't believe that God comes in and causes you to have cancer, causes your child to die in order for you to learn what you might learn from that particular experience. Now, if that is your theology, if that's what you think God is doing, then just you could eat cupcakes for a few more minutes. Because the point I'm trying to make is we need to decide where and what God is doing. I believe I'm being empowered to make decisions based on my connection to God mind. Now, in unity, there are some of us who believe in soul contracts. And one of the people that I know has written books about that, I love her books, but Louise Hay said that she came into this life and she got cancer because she needed to learn some things in this particular life experience, and the only way to learn those things was through cancer. So there are ministers, there are people in unity who believe that we have a soul contract, and our purpose here is driven by that contract. Now, I will say that I want to talk to my pre-birth self about that contract because I really didn't want every darn thing that happened to me to happen. Because some of it just didn't need to happen, and I just as soon not have gotten a PhD in bad stuff. But because you'll hear that. People will say, oh man, I got hit by a cosmic 2x4. You know, that the universe woke me up. Well, again, like Billy Joe, I did bad stuff over and over and over again until it hurt bad enough, and then I made a change. But I don't believe God kept putting those things in my way to make it happen. You see, because good stuff is supposed to happen to us, the only predestination I believe in is that this is a good place. This place is a good place to hang out. Now, people can screw it up. Don't get me wrong in that. People can really mess it up, and I'm one of those guys who did that a lot. I have spent the last 30 years of my sobriety trying to make it up to my kids in whatever way I can. And sometimes the only way I can is to be the human being the best human being that I can be. And sometimes that's really hard. But that's what we do. So my soul contract was a new contract I signed when I had the ability to sign it. And that contract is that I am open to the good that God has in this universe. And I am open every day to that. So when people say one door closes, 3 doors open, those 3 doors were already open. I just got into an opportunity to find the doors. And I was open to the doors, not sitting back crying about the lost job or the lost opportunity. Again, I have to talk fast here, so I apologize. I did it again, I told you. So spiritual bypass is a way that I did have to go back. Spiritual bypass is a way that we just make ourselves feel good. And I think this saying is one of those ways that we do that. By the way, I'm kind of warming here. But I think this is one of the ways that we bypass. We just say it's God's will and just can shrug our shoulders. Some people can do that. I'm a project manager, or was a project manager. I was also an aviation accident or aviation safety officer, and in that role, we always look at bad stuff. When helicopters crash and people die, we want to know why they crashed and why people died. And when bad things happen in organizations, we want to know why they happened. What happened? We do it all the time. We don't just shrug our shoulders and say this was an opportunity for us to learn. Boy, if I stood next to a helicopter that had held 4 human beings flying out of this hospital where I flew out of, if I stood next to that helicopter and just shrugged my shoulders and said, it happened for a reason, probably God wouldn't go, and it wouldn't work so good for you. One of the things that came to my mind is that spiritual bypass is a way that we want to take that book of our life. We want to take that book and tear a page out. And you tear that page out and you put it in the closet in a box. And you tear another page out and put it in the closet in the box. Rather than holding on to that page. Because that page is a part of your life. The illnesses you have, the people that you have gotten along with, the people that you haven't gotten along with, all of those experiences are a part of who you are today. And as you get to the end of that book, as some of us are getting closer and closer, we know that every step of the way, every page is important. And when you get towards the end of your life, you don't want to be sitting there saying, oh man, I got to pull that one out of my box before I can die. It sounds funny, but it's the truth. I have watched it over and over and over again. When a hospice nurse or a doctor will say, is there any reason he can't die? And it happens over and over. Because there are things in their lives that they've shoved away. Don't do it. Don't do it. So yeah, it happens. We have cause and effect. Mr. Fillmore talked about cause and effect over and over again. It was part of his scientific background, his scientific thinking. And I put something in there that sometimes people don't do. We have cause and effect. But then we have our reaction or our response. And then we have another cause and then another effect. Now some of you may know what that's like. You are bothered by the dishwasher and how the dishwasher gets loaded, because in every relationship, one person knows how to load the dishwasher and one person doesn't. Now that I believe God did. I think God made that plan, and so that you can learn how to let stupid stuff go. The fact is that I indeed know how to load a dishwasher. I mean, I've got that worked out. Tetris and me, we got it going. But when the dishwasher needs to be re-Tetrised, I often have a reaction. And sometimes it's really easy, real quiet, and only God or my higher power can hear it. And wherever my wife is in the room, she will know that I have just looked at the top drawer of the dishwasher and found something that doesn't belong there. And now we have a new cause and a new effect. And so it's up to me on how I'm going to respond to that, whether or not we're going to have a good time. So what else can you say? I rely on my Christ nature to understand the meaning. And that doesn't mean right now necessarily. Eric Butterworth told us we always have a choice. In fact, he said this whole thing, everything we do in unity can be boiled down to that. We always have a choice. We always have a choice. We can choose how we're going to be in this life and how we're going to be when the dishwasher is not loaded properly. So this is Cora and Charles Fillmore. Some of you never heard of Cora, probably. Cora was Charles's second wife. They wrote a book together. They wrote a book called Teach Us to Pray. And I've just reread that book, and I think now it's probably risen to within top 2 or 3 Unity books that I read. It's so important. But here are the things. There are always better things just ahead for those who build in mind the living thought entities that go before and open the way. In other words, when stuff happens, you build your thinking to where it needs to be to move forward and to find things in a better way. It doesn't mean that you don't get sad. It doesn't mean you don't get glad. It means that you use your thoughts, you use your choice as we move forward in your life. I'm just going to quickly do this. We got to start with love, and this is just the steps. Almost, there's Willie Nelson. And anyway, the steps that I suggest is that we know that this is going to change. My wife, when I brought this up to my wife, she brought up the fact that her mother died when she was 22. Her mother was 49 years old and took her own life. And she had one way of relating to that, whereas her brother, who had some mental challenges, when we went to the hospital or to the doctor together, her brother could not say, "My mother committed suicide." He was 70 years old and could not say that out loud. So he had a difficult time in making the change or experiencing the change. So what my goal is to always just hold the truth that this experience of this bad thing will change. Your experience of the loss of the child will change. It won't go away. And finally, before I melt here, this is Wicked Witch of the West stuff going on, melting. Anyway, if you don't believe Charles and Cora Fillmore, if you don't believe me, I want you to believe Willie Nelson, he had an album called The Last Man Standing, because he and Chris Christopherson are the only guys of the old outlaw country people from the 70s that are still here. The only guys still hanging out. And I'm going to ask somebody to read this so I don't, again, have to turn my back here. This is from a song, and it's, for me, it's the truth. So who wants to read it? Cecilia, you want to do it again?
Okay, great. When you lose the one you love, you think your world has ended. You think your world will be a waste of life without them in it. You feel there's no way to go on. Life is just a sad, sad song. But love is bigger than us all. The end is not the end at all. It's not something you get over, but it's something you get through. It's not ours to be taken. It's just a thing we get to do.
So just think about that. As we think about God, love is bigger than us all. And the whole thing is we're not asking anybody to get over the bad stuff. That's not the question. We move through. Because life is intended to be good. And the extraordinary life that's on the other side includes the loss. Every loss that we've ever had. When you get up in the morning, you get to make a choice. The music of the day begins. And that music that you choose, it can be a funeral dirge, it can be a dance, or it can just be a march. I choose to dance. Thank you. One last thing, I gave you this because this is one of Eric Butterworth's favorite poems, and the whole thing there, the first 4 words, the truth is within ourselves. That's the story. That may be the real story of unity and not the other thing he said. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that. What a great presentation.
Yes. Amen.
Amen. Now it's time to give and receive. As the ushers come forward, I invite you to hold your tithes and offerings in your hand as we bless our gifts with affirmation on the screen. Remember, it is the consciousness from which you give that makes a difference. We live in an indefinite, abundant universe. Together,
Happy, blessed, and multiply all that I am, all that I give, and all that I receive. I send it forth with my blessings and my love.
I know it's a little warm, so we'll try to cool it down in just a few minutes. We open our hearts together in gratitude for these gifts freely given. We bless the givers and send these gifts toward the highest purpose in this ministry, in our community, and in the world. Amen. Now, let's close with prayer of protection. All together.
The light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Amen. Okay, we got 10 minutes break, and then we're going to have our town meeting. So we do have something to eat over here, some little cupcakes individually. And we got some water as well. So let's go ahead and take a break.